When you're able to keep a layer of distance between yourself and your thoughts, you realize that you're not your thoughts. Same thing applies to emotions and sensations. Paradoxically, it allows you to feel and appreciate these things better than you would if you were completely identified with the sensations or identified with the immediate reactions to those sensations. What you are, the real you, the deeper you, is the awareness. It's being. It's not a thing. It is the no thing. It is the consciousness through which all of this is perceived, all of the objects, all of the thoughts, emotions, sensations. Spirituality is about realizing that. It's about looking internally into yourself, into your real self, into your being, into being, which is you. Being is universal. Being is the universe. From being comes everything. It all spawns from being. And when you see another person and you look into their eyes, they say the eyes are the window to the soul. What you're seeing is being. You don't need to look at their eyes to see that, but you may connect with it a little better when you do. The eyes don't lie. Some people who are very calculative or cold, their eyes are very silent, not in a good way. They're not expressing because they have a layer, a cold layer on top, to guard against other people reading them as they're reading them. And that type of mentality comes from distrustfulness. It comes from a fearful relationship with the universe, which has been internalized and has created its own mechanisms of manipulation. And that manipulation comes because they can't accept reality. And why is that? Well, the ego, which is based in fear, it's the false sense of self, can't accept anything except the narrow confines of achieving its goal. And its goal is normally something that's short-sighted, something that's not intelligent in a true sense, something that's based in lack and want, something that's based in building its own self up. The ego is not actually concerned with you. The ego within you doesn't actually truly care about you. It pretends it does, and it makes its goals your goals. So let's say, for example, that in your soul, you're a painter. You love painting. Well, the ego may tell you out of fear that you like money, and that's the only thing you care about. It's the only thing it cares about. And then, so long as you're run unconsciously by it, your life will be dedicated to money. And somewhere in your heart, you're going to think, yeah, someday I'll make so much money, and I'll just be able to paint all day. You might think that. Your soul may say that to you. Well, what your soul is really saying is, I want to paint. And then you're negotiating with this false ego, which is obsessed with money. So my point is, from the standpoint of the ego, it can't actually give you what you want. Its desires are not yours. Its desires are based in fears, which you'd rather not have anything to do with. And why does this arise? Because of a false relationship with the universe. Fear comes from anticipation of the future and believing that it's not going to go as you prefer, and then fearing it. That doesn't mean you rationally protect against it. It doesn't mean you shift course. It doesn't mean you handle the situation. It means that you're locked in your preferences and the future may threaten that. And then you fear it because you're dwelling in anticipation. You're not living presently. When you live presently, that thing that you fear, that iceberg in the water, you may simply just steer your ship presently and avoid it. It itself may move. There's nothing to fear in that respect. The fear is in the anticipation. So when you have all that fear, a subpersonality develops that wants to combat that fear with extreme ideas. That's where the money ego comes for a lot of people. And then so long as they unconsciously identify with it, they can work for money forever, or for many years, and then miss out on things they actually want to do. And they could die before they end up doing what they want to do. And the more you go down that path, not the money, there's nothing wrong with money. It's a matter of what is your relationship with what you're doing. What are the motivations driving it? Is it ego? Is it love? Is it necessity? Is it truth? Right? So whatever the fear-based thing may be, the further you go down that path, the more locked up you get within it. You develop a further identity around it. The world may look at you as this person as well. It's playing tennis, and then you can't break out of it so easily without abandoning everything that you've built. And what you've built is based on lies. That's a big and hard thing to break out of. I talked to a guy today. He told me about Roy Cohn, this lawyer guy from the 60s, 70s, 80s. He said that he was this just like evil guy and basically just cared about fame and reputation and money. And he just he was probably a crooked lawyer too. I don't know much about him, but according to the guy who told me this guy Roy Cohn never did a good thing in his life. So it's probably an exaggeration because everyone does something good at some point. But so much as he was simply presenting it to me, this guy Roy Cohn is not living a happy life because it's built on that fear. It's based on those lies, and it starts. You develop the fear at some point, then you just take the path further and further and further. And your mind is extremely intelligent, the same mind that is able to get the grades you got in school, or do what you're able to do at work, communicate with people as you can. That same mind, which is very intelligent, if you feed it the wrong stuff, which is fear, oh boy, it can populate a whole world of fear, and then every aspect of your being and your reality becomes tethered to that fear. And your life will quite literally revolve around it. I don't know, that's literally the use of the word literally in that case, but it will quite, very much revolve around it. Take Roy Cohn. He has to work really hard. And if he's lying most of the time, then he has to work very hard at those lies. If he gets under investigation for these lies, at some point he needs to lie more. He can't ever, the hole goes further and further and further till the person is completely corrupted. Now, the saving grace, the good thing, is that for someone like Roy Cohn, or someone who is very, very bad, like say like some criminal or some just horrible person, and I use that term loosely, but for simplicity, the beauty is that no matter how far from the mark they may be, no matter how corrupted they may be, well, there's still consciousness. If they weren't, they wouldn't exist. That's the beauty in each person. And some express it better than others. Some live it and embody it better than others. But they're all consciousness. Some are just more realized than others. Someone like Roy Cohn is completely lost in his ego. And if I'm a person, right? I get up every day, I live, and I have my unhappinesses, I have my happinesses, I have various emotions and so forth, right? Roy Cohn is the same thing. The difference is that, and by the way, I don't know about the guy personally, I'm using it as an example, right? But he is in a living hell because he's so corrupted internally. When he wakes up, like when he does the non-lawyer stuff, the regular stuff, when he eats, when he wakes up, when he does whatever, when he drives his car, right? Like, there's no happiness. So basically he ends up dredging through life in this depressed state. And then in order to come out of it, or come out of it as best as he thinks he can under the, force of the ego, he'll just keep doing more, power aggrandizement and so forth. Lies. Representing bad people. Whatever. That's what happens when you take this path. Now, the saving grace, though, is that you can still break out of it. And many times the people who are the furthest corrupted, who are the most ego-based, who are the most traumatized, who are traumatized and then built up severe defenses, scarring, and so forth to cover it up, many times they're the ones who pivot and then become the most exceptional people. And the reason is they hit a point at which regular functioning with regard to the normal base state of egoic existence, or material existence, so to say, collapses on them. This happened in Breaking Bad, the show. Spoiler alert. Basically, the high school teacher finds out he's going to die, and he becomes a drug dealer, and then he starts off just making a few bucks here and there, but then he becomes this mogul, and he goes really far down that path, and then some really bad stuff happens, really bad stuff when he gets really bad, and he is so horrified at what happens, his whole world shatters. For him personally, he had to go so deep down that path, though, before the world reflected back to him in a horrific way the quality of his character and the quality of his actions. And then, and only then, after he cracked, did he become something on the path of enlightenment. So, no person is truly unsalvageable. They're all consciousness. And you can't really predict, actually, who's going to do what, who's going to be what. You can predict to some extent. People don't change in many cases, but in many cases they do, especially when they're awoken, which is an act of grace that comes from the universe, that comes from consciousness. You can't plan it. So everybody essentially goes along their path. And all paths are expressions of consciousness. And then all paths end up leading back to pure consciousness. In the same way all rivers flow to the sea. The Mississippi, the St. John's. They all end up in the ocean. All the oceans are connected. The same way the materials that comprise our bodies turn again into earth stuff when the body is no longer alive and it recycles. So each of our life paths is our way essentially of living consciousness. And it's our personal way of trying to find our way back to consciousness. Eckhart Tolle talks about the thinking mind done without awareness, where it assumes its own life and then runs you, rather than you using it as a tool. In the same way I can use my hand to make the peace sign. I can use my hand to do anything that I choose make it do. But the mind runs you, if you allow it to, and because if you live without awareness. And this awareness is what I referred to in the beginning of this video, which is the fact that you are the awareness. You are the awareness experiencing everything. You are the awareness without which none of this would exist. And none of the things that populate your awareness are you. They're all perishable. And they all will perish. Or recycle, or whatever you may want to call it. They will change form. The things themselves are not what are of importance. It's the awareness. And I'm adding in this context the body as part of the things, some of the things that populate the awareness. It's something that you're perceiving. The life you're living is something you're perceiving. And there's so many different types of perception. Awareness is perceiving me right now. Awareness, as far as you're concerned, is perceiving you right now. This begins to occupy a deeper significance when it comes to charting a life path. And what I mean is, when you're in alignment with your consciousness and with larger consciousness, you find yourself fitting, you find yourself feeling as if you're one with life. In which case you don't need to be like Roy Cohn or any of those cold, calculative people. And I say that cold, calculative people, well, everybody can be cold and calculative from time to time. I've been. You must have been. It's just a matter of how much we do it, how much we're run by it, how much we're run by our egoic impulses, how much we're run by our fear. And that capacity to improve and change, and that capacity to be one thing or the other, exists within each person. You can be good, you can be bad. You can embody any quality you want, really. Especially since the qualities that you have, in large part, are just things that have come out of conditioning. But you're the unconditioned awareness from which anything can spawn. So when it comes to the domain of emotions, personal qualities, habits, virtues, so forth, they can be cultivated, even if they run contrary to your current nature and programming. Because that nature and programming is something your consciousness is experiencing now, but it can also just be changed with some practice and with awareness. So you can direct your life in that respect, and leave some of it up to the universe too. Surprising changes can occur within you if you allow them to. And even if you don't, you may end up starting to allow yourself to, in which case you now allow yourself to, without even wanting to have allowed yourself to. And once you allow yourself to, once one crack in the dam of ego is there, well, the whole dam will fall down at some point, and a river of water will come through, washing away all the nonsense, washing away all the false conditionings, and bringing you into oneness with yourself, with your life, peace with everything, resolution of conflicts that are indwelling, resentments, grievances. That's the coming of real happiness. It's the coming of real peace. It's the coming of real joy. That's the coming of consciousness in its purest form, which exists within you, which is you. And there's only one consciousness, of which we're all differentiated forms, with different skills, different life paths, different everything. I like X, Y, Z. You like A, B, C. Or maybe A, B, X, Y. It doesn't matter. We're all just experiencing different things. So with that in mind, let's do our best to allow. To say yes to the world, say yes to the universe. Allow ourselves to change. Whether it's through our active effort or simply through relaxing a bit to the point that things start to change automatically. Or some combination of both. Let's let ourselves be the best we can be. The best that we are. So that we can live our fullest self. And with no effort of our own, inspire others to do the same. Simply by doing it ourselves. That's the beauty.